Can play improve our risk management? Hey, it's Amanda and Paul here, and we'd like to take you through the instructions to SlackMaster. The objective is to improve tacit knowledge of individual risk preferences. In essence, we're going to mirror challenging situations that every project team faces. So, how do you play this game?
First of all, you have a project to do, and you are all working together to get this project done. Here's a few of the roles that we have. This is a project manager's responsibility to get this project done. He or she has some managers that are going to help him or her out, and some workers that are actually going to do the project work, because somebody has to actually do it. The project manager is given the overall budget that'll be used for risk mitigation, and he or she can divide it out however he or she likes. And this project is divided into 3 phases. We have the start phase, where we're getting to know each other, we're learning about the task, we're getting our wheels turning. And then steady phase, we've got our groove, we're working hard, we're making progress. And then everything hits the fan at the storm phase, all at the end. This project starts out with tasks going to the workers. The facilitator will deal out 3 of them to each worker for the start phase. And they're dealt out face down. Then the worker flips them all over and starts, top to bottom. Task 1 is at the top, task 3 is at the bottom. And they're done in that order, just like in a project. So once the workers start planning, they start thinking, how big of a challenge do I have in front of me? Do I have a critical path job that's going to hold up the entire project if it's not done? Does that make it a risk? Can I get my manager to buy some risk mitigation to help me out? So those conversations are going on in this planning stage. And once you've decided as a team, the manager puts down some chits and will replace those with risk mitigation cards and get this project going. Then we go into execution, where we find out just how good you are in that moment. The capability cards are dealt out face up, and if there's a critical path job that's not done, then we'll stop. Otherwise, we keep on rolling.
So what does it look like? I'm Joe Worker, and here's what in front of me. Notice I have my tasks 1, 2, and 3, and there's their challenge levels. I've got a torpedo, a feel-gooder, and a day job. Notice that day job's got that round red circle with a CP standing for critical path. Notice the title's also in red. Critical path, nothing gets done if that doesn't get done. So along came the facilitator, and I remember I had bought some risk mitigation, so I plunked down some to face the risk of that 15, so I had converted a chit into a minor risk mitigation card. So let's focus on that. So there I am looking at task number 1. Now, little hint, somewhere in the 7 range, above that's hard, below that's easy. Along comes the capability. It's a smart kid at an 8. So the kid's actually kind of average with an 8. That doesn't match the 15, but I was smart enough to put some risk mitigation in place, and that, when we turned it over, we find out it's a 7. 8, 7, 15. Looks like I've got enough to do my job. So now I look at my little cheat, and I notice that my little man is not going to move because I have neither surplus nor backlog. What do I mean by that? Let's take a look at the reasoning process that's happening at the end of every time we do a task.
So in this example, we had a capability plus a risk mitigation, which was exactly equal to the task. Therefore, we did perfect. Our marker doesn't move, no backlog, no excess capacity. But if our capability plus risk mitigation is greater than the task, we have to think, is this critical path? If it's not, then we have some excess capacity. This is awesome because we may be able to use it in later tasks to help us work off some backlog. But if it is critical path, then just like in real life, when you throw some resources at a critical path job, you can't steal those to work on something else. They just get used up in the heat of the moment, so you can't move your marker. But let's say you had the unfortunate situation of your capability plus risk mitigation was less than your task. You're looking at critical path again. If it's not, you have some backlog. You move your marker to the negative, you've taken that backlog into the next task. But if it is critical path, the entire project is stopping. And in order to get it started again, you have to buy some emergent risk mitigation in order to get that capability plus risk mitigation up there to above or equal to the task. And again, your marker doesn't move because it's critical path.
Now we're going to do task 2, which are the capabilities are handed out likewise for the task 2 phase. And here I am, the worker. Notice that I've already had task 1 sitting up there. So now let's take a look. For my task 2, which was a 2, I got a card that was an apprentice, a capability of 3. That's looking pretty good. 3 is more than 2. It's not critical path. Looks like I have a little surplus that I might be able to carry into the next task. So my little man goes to +1. Therefore, I am able to move my marker to the positive column. That moves us into task 3. Again, the card's being dealt face up. So me as a worker, I'm sitting there. I've looked at the end of task 2. The new card shows up. Here I had a critical path job that needed a 7. I got McGurvel to the rescue. She gives me a 10. Boo-hoo, I am ready to go. I got a little excess capability, but it was a critical path job, so therefore our little man does not move. He stays where he was at the +1, and we are now looking at the situation where I had capability, and it was greater than the task, but it was critical path. I do not move the markers. So right across there on that second row. So we end the end of the start phase with what looks like a +1, but you know what? We really can't carry over our positive capacity until the next day because it's gone forever. So our little man is going to just shoot back to the 0 at the start of the next phase, the steady phase.
Managers gathering the metrics. We find Mr. SlackMaster had a +1 in the backlog category. That means it's excess, so it's not really backlog at all. But we capture it here so that we can see just how conservative or not conservative he is playing. We spent one of the risk mitigation budget chits on him in this phase, and we find that out about the rest of the players on this team. And we find out that Ms. Risky ended up with a backlog, and everybody else had a surplus. So our total backlog is a -5. The risk mitigation purchase was 9, so we deduct that from 44. We have 35 left, and hopefully that'll be enough for the last 2 phases.
So now we go into the steady phase. The cards are dealt out exactly like they were in the start phase. So all the tasks got put out. They were face down. We then turned them all over at the same time. And then we are going to do our evaluation. Here, as a worker, I'm looking at a 12 and an 18. They look pretty tough, so I'm going to get some minor and some major risk mitigation. We put down the green chits. They're turned into cards, and we're ready to go. So when I get my first task, I had a challenge of 5 on a critical path. Capability was a 7. And so therefore, I have surplus, but I have surplus on a critical path. It doesn't do anything. I stay in the same spot. Now I have task 2. It's just going to come around when all the task 1s are done. I'm going to get a task 2 card. Notice the challenge was a 12. My capability, that little teenager only gave me a 2, but I did have some risk management. It was a 6. Oh, but 2 and 6 gives me 8. I needed a 12. Oh man, I'm still stuck. This is bad news. What's happening now?
Emergent risk mitigation.
So the expensive emergent risk mitigation comes in. That +5. So now I've got 11 in mitigation plus my 2. Looks like I got enough to do the job. Is the surplus worth anything? No, because it's critical path and it was emergent, so my little man's going to stay in the same spot. Coming into task 3, notice I have a huge challenge, but I've bought some major risk mitigation, but I brought a bad day to the job. I guess I was a little sleepy. I'm a McGoober on the day. A 1 and a 14 only give me 15. I'm pretty shy on stuff left over here, so I'm shy on work. -3 at the end of the steady phase. Uh-oh, that's the end of the phase. What do I do? Well, the good news is that's not critical path. Maybe I'll get this done tomorrow. So I'm going to move some backlog into tomorrow. So at the end of the 1, there I am, stuck over in the minus column. Because remember, backlog stays with you. Excess capacity does not. It cannot roll over. So what's that look like on the manager's metrics?
This time we spent 3 chits with Mr. SlackMaster, and he ended up with a backlog of -3. And the rest of the team seemed to have a tough go of it. We ended up with a whole bunch of backlog this phase, a -15, even though we spent 10 on risk mitigation, which was even more than we had last time. Sometimes that's the way things go. And our overall budget balance is 25 going into the storm phase, which seems like a lot, but the storm phase is always stormy.
So the storm phase, this is our last phase. It's get it done or go home. 1, all backlog has to be worked off. Why is that? Because the whole project has to be done. All tasks have to be completed. Risk mitigation, well, we're in the storm phase. We're going to be paying for expedited shipping, overtime, all those things to be able to do mitigate risk. So it's pretty darn expensive. You can see it's almost twice as expensive as what it normally is. That's going to burn up that remaining budget if we need it. So real quickly, the storm phase is going to look like the other phases, but we're going to just show you a couple things. Let's say, for chance, our capability was 6, our challenge was 1, it was not critical path, so therefore we end up with a little excess. Notice that excess is 5. Since we brought backlog of 3 over, 5 minus 3 means we're going to end up with a +2. So notice we worked off our backlog and still end up in a little excess. When we go to our next task with the challenge of 5, we got a capability of 7. So again, that gives us 2 excess. Are we able to do that? Yes, we are able to use that. And so therefore because it's not critical path, we're going to add that. So we go from a +2 to a +4 going into task 3. So in task 3, so challenge of 24, we only end up with a 15 and a 6, gives us 21. But we have that excess capacity that we are able to apply now to this job because it's us within the same phase. So that little 4 gives us enough to get the job done. We end up with a +1 to end the game. Means we are done the project. How does that look on the score sheet?
The managers get together and we find out that it looks like everybody got their task done because all the backlog numbers are positive. How about our budget? Looks like we spent 24. That leaves 1, but hey, that leaves 1 left. Our project is done and we stayed within the budget.